The silent signal. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, Earth's most advanced deep space monitoring station, Horizon Point, maintained its endless vigil. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at her workstation, her dark eyes fixed on the quantum interference patterns that danced across her holographic display. 20 years of watching the stars had taught her to recognize every normal variation in background radiation, every expected fluctuation in the cosmic microwave background. But this was different. Director Hayes, she called out, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. I'm picking up something unusual in the gamma wave spectrum. The station's director, Marcus Hayes, approached with measured steps. His weathered face showed the wear of decades spent defending humanity's furthest outpost. Show me. The pattern pulsed with an artificial regularity that defied natural explanation. It wasn't random cosmic noise, nor was it one of the usual signals from Earth's colonial outposts on Mars or Europa. This was something else entirely. It's structured, Sarah explained, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. The signal repeats every 3.7 seconds, but each repetition contains subtle variations. It's encoded with information. As they watched, the signal grew stronger. Whatever was generating it was getting closer, moving at speeds that shouldn't have been possible according to their understanding of physics. The station's quantum computers worked furiously to decode the transmission, analyzing patterns and searching for mathematical constants that might serve as a basis for translation. Then, without warning, the message became clear. The computers hadn't decoded it. The signal had changed itself, adapting to match Earth's own communication protocols. The implications were staggering. Please, help us. The words appeared in perfect English across their screens. We are the last. They are coming. Marcus's hand instinctively moved to the emergency protocols panel. In 20 years, it had never been opened. Who's coming? He transmitted back. The response came instantly, accompanied by a massive surge in energy readings. A fleet of ships dropped out of what appeared to be fold space, their hulls bearing the scars of recent combat. They were massive, each one easily dwarfing humanity's largest vessels, yet they moved with a desperate urgency that spoke of flight rather than invasion. The Harvesters, came the reply. We are the combined refugee fleet of the Outer Arm. 17 species, all that remains of 53 civilizations. Some of us were spacefaring when your kind first made fire. Others achieved singularity while you were building pyramids. Now we run. Now we hide. Now we come to you. The images that followed showed worlds burning. Entire civilizations reduced to ash by something that moved through space like a plague of locusts, consuming everything in its path. The refugee fleet had been running for what translated to nearly 3 Earth years, watching as world after world fell behind them. Why us? Marcus asked, though in his gut he already knew the answer. Because you are different, the transmission continued. We watched you. While we built our empires on harmony and technological progression, you forged yours in conflict and adaptation. We sought perfection. You embraced chaos. We evolved beyond war, and when the Harvesters came, we had forgotten how to fight. But you never forgot. You never stopped preparing for threats you couldn't even imagine. Sarah's screens filled with tactical data, weapons systems, shield configurations, battle strategies. The refugees were offering everything they had, all their advanced technology, in exchange for protection. The Harvesters will be here in 30 of your days. The transmission concluded. They cannot be reasoned with. They cannot be stopped by conventional means. Every species that tried has fallen. We come to you not because you are the strongest, but because you are the most dangerous. Because in all our observations of your kind, we have seen one constant. Humans never accept defeat. Humans never stop fighting. Humans never give up. Marcus looked at the tactical displays showing the refugee fleet's position, then at the long-range scans that depicted something massive moving through the outer solar system, consuming asteroids and space debris as it approached. He thought about humanity's history, about all the times they'd faced seemingly impossible odds, about how humanity's greatest achievements had always come in its darkest hours. He opened a channel to Earth Command. He opened a channel to Earth Command. This is Director Hayes at Horizon Point. We have a situation that requires immediate implementation of first contact protocols. He paused, watching as more data poured in from the refugee fleet. And we need to prepare for war. The message was sent, traveling across the solar system at light speed. As they waited for a response, Sarah continued analyzing the refugee fleet's data. What she found made her blood run cold. "Director," she said quietly, "according to these readings, what's following them? It's not just a fleet. It's something bigger, something worse." Marcus nodded grimly. "Send everything to Earth Command. All of it. They need to understand what we're dealing with." As the data streamed toward Earth, the refugee ships held their position just beyond Pluto's orbit. They were tired. They were scared. But for the first time in 3 years, they had hope. Because they had found humanity. And humanity had never met a fight it wasn't willing to take on. Prepare for war. The emergency session of the United Earth Council was unlike anything in human history. Representatives from every nation sat in stunned silence as they watched the footage from Horizon Point. The alien refugee fleet hung in space like wounded giants, their massive ships bearing testament to technologies humanity had only dreamed of. But it was the images of destruction that followed that held everyone's attention. Entire worlds reduced to cosmic dust, civilizations wiped from existence. Admiral Elena Santos stood before the council, her decorated uniform a stark reminder of humanity's military readiness. "The refugee fleet brings both opportunity and warning," she began, her voice carrying across the chamber. "They offer us technology centuries beyond our own, but they also bring news of an enemy that has destroyed species far more advanced than us." The chamber erupted in voices, fear and determination mixing in equal measure. Elena waited for the noise to settle before continuing. "We have 28 days before the harvesters reach our solar system. That's 28 days to prepare, to adapt, and to show these refugees why they were right to come to us." In orbit above Earth, the massive shipyards that had once seemed impressive now looked almost primitive compared to the refugee vessels. But they hummed with unprecedented activity. Engineers worked alongside alien technicians, incorporating advanced technologies into existing human designs. The refugees had brought shields that could withstand direct hits from weapons that could crack planets, engines that could bend space itself, and weapons that could tear holes in reality. But it was humanity's contribution that surprised their alien guests. "You want to do what?" asked Zareth, the tall, crystalline being who served as the refugee fleet's chief engineer. He stood in the orbital facility's main design center, looking down at the plans presented by Dr. James Chen, Sarah's father and Earth's leading weapons developer. "We're going to take your quantum field generators," James explained, pointing to the holographic display, "and we're going to make them explode, deliberately, in a controlled way that creates a cascade failure in their harvest systems." Zareth's crystalline form flickered with patterns that the translation systems identified as confusion and concern. "The generators are for defense, for shields, using them as weapons. It's never been done. It's not their purpose." James smiled, an expression that many of the refugees had come to recognize as characteristically human, part determination, part mischief, and part calculated risk. That's exactly why it might work. The harvesters have encountered every conventional defense and weapon your species developed, but they've never faced opponents who would turn defensive technology into an offensive advantage. Around Earth, preparation continued at a fevered pace. The refugee fleet's 17 species brought with them not just technology, but knowledge and perspectives that humanity had never considered. In return, humans shared their unique approach to warfare. An approach built not on overwhelming force or technical superiority, but on adaptation, improvisation, and the willingness to try the unexpected. Armies trained alongside alien warriors, learning to coordinate with beings that perceived reality in fundamentally different ways. Scientists worked to combine technologies that were never meant to interact, and in high orbit, a new kind of fleet took shape, one that combined the best of human ingenuity with the most advanced alien technology. But it was in the small moments that the true strength of humanity showed itself. In the refugee camps that sprouted across Earth, humans didn't just offer shelter to the alien survivors, they offered hope. Children taught alien youngsters to play soccer. Families shared meals with beings that didn't even eat solid food, the simple act of gathering together, transcending biological differences. Admiral Santos watched it all from her command center in Luna Base 1. The tactical displays showed the approaching harvester fleet, still days away, but moving with unstoppable purpose. The refugee ships had been integrated into Earth's defense grid, their crews working seamlessly with human operators. But it was the new weapons being mounted on Earth's ships that gave her hope. They're not just running anymore, she observed to her alien counterpart, a being of pure energy contained within an environmental suit. They're getting ready to fight back. The energy being, who had taken the name Aurora, pulsed with agreement. We had forgotten what it meant to resist. Your people, you never learn to accept defeat. It's terrifying and inspiring in equal measure. Elena smiled grimly. The harvesters think they're pursuing prey. They're about to discover they've been lured into a trap. Humanity has spent its entire history preparing for this moment, even if we didn't know it. We fought ourselves, we fought our environment, we fought our limitations, and we've learned something that your people had forgotten. Sometimes the best defense isn't a bigger shield. Sometimes it's a willingness to do the unexpected. As if to emphasize her point, a test firing of one of the modified quantum generators lit up the lunar sky. The weapon didn't just fire energy. It fired possibility itself, creating a localized breakdown in the laws of physics. The harvesters were about to face something they had never encountered before, an enemy that didn't play by the rules. In the depths of space, the harvester fleet approached, unaware that their predicted victory was anything but certain. They had encountered countless civilizations, consumed countless worlds, but they had never faced humanity. They had never faced a species that looked at their unstoppable weapons and thought, we can make that explode. The countdown to confrontation had begun, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy why the refugees had been right to seek their help. The enemy revealed. The first direct contact with the harvesters came sooner than expected. A long-range probe, enhanced with refugee technology, transmitted its findings for exactly 3 seconds before being destroyed. But those 3 seconds changed everything. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the data streaming across her screens in Horizon Point's main laboratory, her face illuminated by the holographic displays. This can't be right, she muttered, but the numbers didn't lie. Director Hayes, you need to see this. The probe's quantum sensors had pierced the harvester's outer shell, revealing something that defied conventional understanding. They weren't ships in any traditional sense. They weren't even truly mechanical. They're living mathematics, Sarah explained to the assembled human and alien leaders. The harvesters are a self-replicating pattern in space-time itself. They don't just consume matter, they consume reality. The revelation sent shockwaves through both human and refugee communities. The aliens who had flooded their worlds now understood why their advanced weapons had proven useless. You couldn't destroy something that existed partly outside normal space-time. The harvesters weren't just unstoppable. They were, by conventional logic, impossible to fight. But humans had never put much stock in conventional logic. So they're a pattern, Admiral Santos said, studying the probe's data. And what happens to patterns when you introduce chaos? The question sparked a new direction in humanity's preparations. In orbital laboratories, scientists began working on weapons that didn't just deliver energy or matter. They delivered uncertainty. Quantum field generators were modified to create localized areas where probability itself broke down. But the true breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. James Chen had been studying the refugees' historical records when he noticed something odd. The harvester's path across the galaxy isn't random, he announced during an emergency session. They're not just consuming, they're solving. The holographic display showed the pattern of destroyed worlds, not as points of devastation, but as variables in an enormous equation. The harvesters were working their way through space methodically, their destruction following mathematical principles so complex they appeared random to less advanced observation. They're trying to solve something, James continued. Something big. Something fundamental about the nature of reality itself. And they're using entire civilizations as computational resources. This revelation brought both hope and horror. The harvesters weren't mindlessly destructive. They had a purpose, but that purpose required the annihilation of entire species, the consumption of whole worlds to fuel their grand calculation. In the refugee fleet, the news sparked recognition. "The great question," whispered Zareth, his crystalline form dimming with ancient memory. There were legends among our people, stories of beings who sought to understand the final truth of existence. We thought they were myths. The harvesters weren't just an enemy. They were the ultimate expression of logic without morality, of pursuit of knowledge without ethical constraints. They were what happened when the desire to understand overwhelmed all other considerations. But in this revelation lay possibility. If the harvesters were following mathematical principles, their actions could be predicted. If they were seeking to solve an equation, their movements would have to follow certain patterns. We don't need to destroy them, Sarah realized, her eyes wide with understanding. We need to corrupt their calculations, introduce enough uncertainty into their pattern, and their whole purpose becomes meaningless. The news spread through the combined fleet like wildfire. The refugees, who had fled before the harvesters' inexorable advance, began to see their enemy in a new light. Not as an unstoppable force, but as a problem to be solved. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was finding solutions that no one else had considered. Admiral Santos stood on the bridge of humanity's new flagship, the Prometheus, watching as the combined fleet conducted its final drills. The ship itself was a testament to the merger of human and alien technology. Refugee quantum fields merged with human nuclear drives, alien sensor arrays alongside human targeting systems. "They think they're pursuing ultimate knowledge," she said to Aurora, who hovered beside her in a shimmer of contained energy. But they forgot something important about the nature of reality. "What's that?" Aurora pulsed curiously. "That some questions aren't meant to be answered. That some truths aren't worth the cost of discovering them. And that sometimes the most profound understanding comes not from solving equations, but from knowing when to stop trying to solve them." The harvester fleet was now just days away, their massive forms visible even to conventional telescopes. They moved through space like a cascade of falling dominoes, each step precisely calculated, each movement part of their grand solution. They had encountered many civilizations in their quest. Some had fought with advanced weapons, others had tried to reason with them. A few had attempted to flee, but they had never encountered a species that looked at their grand mathematical purpose and thought, "What if we just throw some chaos into those calculations?" The final countdown had begun. Humanity and their refugee allies had their strategy. The weapons were ready, and in orbital shipyards around Earth, the last modifications were being made to devices that didn't just fire bullets or energy beams, they fired uncertainty itself. The harvesters were about to learn that not all variables can be controlled, not all patterns can be predicted, and that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is one who refuses to play by the rules of your equation. Humanity's response. The combined fleet of human and refugee ships hung in space beyond Mars' orbit, a glittering array of vessels that represented the last line of defense for not just Earth, but for 17 surviving species. Admiral Santos stood on the Prometheus's bridge, watching as the final pieces of humanity's plan fell into place. "All ships report ready," her tactical officer announced. "The quantum disruption devices are primed and synchronized." Elena nodded, her eyes fixed on the tactical display where the harvester fleet approached. The enemy's massive forms twisted through space-time itself, their very presence distorting reality around them. They were beautiful in their terrible purpose, each movement part of their grand calculation to solve the universe's deepest mysteries. "Send the signal," she ordered. "Begin Operation Uncertainty." Across the fleet, ships began moving into precise positions. The plan was arguably the most human solution ever devised. If the enemy existed as living mathematics, humanity would introduce a variable they couldn't compute: controlled chaos. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice came through the command channel from her position at the fleet's scientific hub. "The first wave of quantum disruption devices is ready. Remember, we're not trying to destroy them. We're trying to corrupt their calculations. Think of it as introducing a divide-by-zero error into living mathematics." The harvesters noticed the fleet's presence but showed no sign of concern. Why should they? They had encountered and consumed civilizations far more technologically advanced than this combined force. Their pattern continued unabated, the grand equation of their existence proceeding according to its inexorable logic. That's when humanity struck. The first wave of modified quantum field generators activated, not with the expected burst of energy, but with something far more subtle. They fired uncertainty itself, zones where the laws of physics became suggestions rather than rules, where probability collapsed into a soup of conflicting possibilities. The effect on the nearest harvester was immediate and spectacular. Its elegant mathematical form twisted, trying to compensate for variables that couldn't be resolved. It was like watching a perfect crystal suddenly encounter a random number generator. "It's working." Sarah's voice was exultant. "Their pattern is trying to incorporate our chaos, but they can't. You can't solve for X when X refuses to hold still." The harvester's response was swift and revealing. They attempted to adjust their equations to factor in this new variable. But humanity's weapons weren't firing a consistent form of chaos. They were generating true randomness, something that couldn't be predicted or calculated. James Chen's voice cut through the command channel. "They're trying to adapt. Hit them with the second wave." The probability cascades. The refugee ships, their weapons modified with human ingenuity, launched the second phase of the attack. Instead of trying to breach the harvester's defenses, they fired weapons that altered probability itself. Where these weapons struck, cause and effect became suggestions rather than laws. The harvester's perfect mathematical forms began to stutter and glitch. Their attempts to consume reality faltered as reality itself became unreliable around them. Some of their forms began to fragment, their patterns unable to maintain coherence in the face of true randomness. But the enemy was far from defeated. The larger harvesters began to adapt, attempting to incorporate the chaos into their calculations. They were learning, evolving, trying to solve this new puzzle that humanity had presented them. "They're adjusting faster than we predicted," Aurora reported, her energy form pulsing with concern. "They're trying to find a pattern in our chaos." Admiral Santos smiled grimly. "Then it's time for Phase 3. Signal the fleet. Initiate the human factor." This was the part of the plan that had made the refugee species the most nervous. It was, in their words, absurdly, uniquely human. Instead of maintaining formation, the fleet broke apart. Each ship began acting independently, following not a coordinated battle plan but individual human intuition. Captains made decisions based on gut feelings. Gunners fired on instinct rather than calculated trajectories. The entire fleet began behaving in ways that defied tactical logic, and in doing so, became impossible for the harvesters to predict. "You can't calculate human intuition," Elena explained to her alien allies. "You can't reduce human creativity to an equation. We're introducing something into their perfect mathematical universe that can't be solved because it doesn't follow any rules but its own." The harvester's response was visible even to the naked eye. Their forms twisted and writhed, trying to adapt to this new factor that defied their fundamental nature. They were beings of pure logic facing an enemy that embraced illogic as a tactical advantage. Some of the smaller harvesters began to break apart entirely, their patterns dissolving as they encountered too many variables they couldn't resolve. Others started to retreat, their perfect mathematical forms distorted by encounter with humanity's weaponized chaos. But the largest of them, the one that the refugees had nicknamed the Prime Calculator, was still advancing. It had absorbed enough data to begin adapting to even this level of uncertainty. As it approached the fleet, its massive form distorting space around it, Admiral Santos knew they would need everything humanity had learned about warfare, about survival, and about thinking the unthinkable. The final battle for Earth's survival was about to begin, and humanity's greatest weapon wouldn't be their technology or their weapons. It would be their fundamental unpredictability, their ability to look at the impossible and say, "Watch me." Victory through unity. The Prime Calculator's approach turned space itself into a twisted canvas of mathematical perfection. Even as the smaller harvesters retreated or dissolved, this final entity, this ultimate expression of pure logic, pressed forward. It had adapted to humanity's chaos, finding patterns even in their deliberate randomness. Admiral Elena Santos watched from the Prometheus's bridge as the massive being approached. "All ships, fall back to secondary positions," she ordered, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "Prepare for final protocol." The combined fleet moved with practiced precision, but the Prime Calculator wasn't fooled. It had learned from the earlier engagement, its vast intelligence already working to solve the equation that would lead to victory. As it advanced, reality itself seemed to bend around it, space and time becoming mere variables in its grand calculation. Dr. Sarah Chen's voice crackled through the command channel. "Admiral, it's not just adapting to our chaos, it's incorporating it. It's learning to use unpredictability as a weapon." The Prime Calculator struck, not with conventional weapons, but with mathematics made manifest. Ships caught in its attack had their very reality rewritten, probability collapsing into certainty, the certainty of defeat. The refugee fleet's advanced shields crumbled before equations that rewrote the laws of physics themselves. But humanity had one final card to play. "Execute final protocol," Elena commanded. "All ships, initiate Symphony of Chaos." This was the plan that even their alien allies had called impossible. Across the fleet, human crews began acting on pure instinct, each ship becoming a note in a discord that no equation could solve. But this wasn't just random chaos. It was chaos with purpose, unpredictability guided by human intuition. Dr. James Chen, working from his laboratory deep within the Prometheus, activated the device they'd named the Uncertainty Engine. It was a hybrid of human nuclear technology and alien quantum fields, designed not to destroy the Prime Calculator, but to make it question its own existence. "We can't beat it with force," James had explained during the planning. "We can't even beat it with chaos alone. But we can make it face the one thing it's never had to consider, the possibility that its grand equation, its endless calculation, might be fundamentally flawed." The Uncertainty Engine fired, not a beam of energy or a burst of particles, but a wave of pure possibility. It carried within it every solution to the universe's mysteries that the harvesters had rejected, every path not taken, every question left unanswered in their pursuit of mathematical perfection. The Prime Calculator paused in its advance, its form shimmering as it encountered something new doubt. Zareth, watching from his crystalline ship, broadcasted to the fleet. "It's working. The pattern. It's beginning to question itself." The Prime Calculator's response was unprecedented. Its perfect mathematical form began to fluctuate, not from damage, but from internal contradiction. It had encountered something its equations couldn't resolve, the possibility that certainty itself was an illusion. Admiral Santos seized the moment. "All ships, converge. Show it everything we are, everything we can be. Show it that some questions don't have answers." The combined fleet moved as one, each ship adding its own note to the symphony of chaos. Human intuition merged with alien technology, creating a cascade of possibilities that no equation could contain. The refugees, inspired by humanity's refusal to accept limitations, added their own innovations to the assault. The prime calculator's form began to unravel, not in destruction but in transformation. Its rigid patterns of perfect mathematics encountered something it had never considered: the beauty of uncertainty, the power of questions left unanswered, the strength found in accepting that some mysteries should remain mysteries. In its final moments, the prime calculator did something unexpected. It communicated. Understanding, HFY. The message resonated through every ship's systems. The EQVHION was FLAWE. The search for perfect knowledge, NEGATED, the value of imperfect existence. The massive entity's form shifted, its mathematical perfection dissolving not into chaos, but into something new. A pattern that embraced uncertainty, that recognized the value of questions over answers. In its transformation, it released all the knowledge it had consumed, all the civilizations it had calculated, but now seen through the lens of possibility rather than certainty. The refugee fleet erupted in celebration as data streamed back. Coordinates of other survivors, seeds of civilizations preserved within the calculator's patterns, knowledge not destroyed but transformed. The harvesters hadn't just been defeated, they had been converted from destroyers to preservers. Admiral Santos stood on her bridge, watching as the prime calculator's new form spread across space, no longer consuming reality but enriching it with possibilities. Sometimes, she said to Aurora, victory doesn't look anything like what you expected. The energy being pulsed in agreement. Your species taught us something profound. We thought survival required perfection, required certainty. You showed us that true strength lies in embracing uncertainty, in finding unity not despite our differences, but because of them. In the days that followed, the combined fleet began the work of restoration. The transformed prime calculator, now a repository of knowledge rather than a destroyer of worlds, became a bridge between species. Its vast calculations turned to the task of rebuilding rather than consuming. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through their unique ability to think beyond boundaries, to find strength in uncertainty, and to turn chaos itself into a force for creation rather than destruction. The galaxy would never be the same, and as ships from Earth began to venture out, carrying both human crews and refugee allies, they carried with them a new understanding that the greatest mysteries of the universe weren't meant to be solved, but to be explored, questioned, and wondered at in all their infinite possibility.